The joint efforts of Spalyansky and the mechanic to prepare the armored cars for action produced somewhat strange results. By the morning of the 14th, 3 vehicles which on the day before had been in perfect running order, the 4th was already in action, commanded by Strashkevich, were immobilized as completely as though stricken with paralysis. No one could understand what was wrong with them. Some kind of dirt was lodged in the carburetor jets, and however hard they tried to blow them through with tire pumps, nothing did any good. That morning they labored hopelessly by lantern light to fix them. Looking pale, Captain Pleshko glanced around him like a hunted wolf and demanded the mechanic. It was then that the affair turned to disaster. The mechanic had disappeared. It transpired that against all rules and regulations troop headquarters had no record of his address. A rumor started that the mechanic had suddenly fallen sick with typhus. This was at 8 a.m. At 8:30 Captain Pleshko received a second blow. Ensign Spalyansky, after finishing the maintenance work on the vehicles at 4 o'clock that morning, had set off for Pekhorsk on a motorcycle driven by Schur and had not come back. Schur had returned alone to tell a sad tale. They had driven as far as Telika, where Schur had tried in vain to dissuade Ensign Spalyansky from doing anything rash. Spalyansky, notorious throughout the troop for his exceptional bravery, had left Schur, and taking a carbine and a hand grenade had set off alone in the darkness to reconnoiter the area around the railroad tracks. Schur heard shots, and was convinced that an enemy patrol, which had pushed forward as far as Telika, had found Spalyansky and had inevitably shot him in an unequal fight. Schur had waited 2 hours for Spalyansky, even though the ensign had ordered him to wait no longer than an hour before returning to troop headquarters, in order not to expose himself and his government-issue motorcycle to excessive risk. On hearing Schur's story, Captain Pleshko turned even paler. The field telephones from the headquarters of the Hetman and General Kutuzov were ringing ceaselessly with urgent demands for the armored cars to go into action. At 9 o'clock the keen, pink-faced young Ensign Strashkevich reported back from duty, and some of the color in his cheeks transferred itself to the face of the troop commander. Strashkevich drove his car off to Pekhorsk where, as has been described, It successfully blocked Suvorovskaya Street against the advancing Bulbotun. By 10 o'clock Pleshko was looking paler than ever. Two of his gun layers, 2 drivers and 1 machine gunner had vanished without trace. Every effort to get the 3 armored cars moving proved fruitless. Schur, who had been ordered out on a mission by Captain Pleshko, never returned. Needless to say, his motorcycle disappeared with him. The voices on the field telephones grew threatening. The brighter grew the morning, the stranger the things that happened at the armored car troop. 2 gunners, Duvin and Maltsev, also vanished, together with a couple more machine gunners. The vehicles themselves took on a forlorn, abandoned look as they stood there like 3 useless juggernauts, surrounded by a litter of spanners, jacks and buckets. By noon the troop commander, Captain Pleshko himself, had disappeared too. For 3 days a confused series of moves and countermoves, some made in the heat of battle, others connected with the arrival of dispatch riders and the squealing of field telephones, had kept Colonel Nai Tur's unit on the move among the snowdrifts and roadblocks around the city in a circuit that extended from Red Tavern to Serebryanka in the south and to Post Volensk in the southwest. By the evening of December 14 the unit was back in the city at a deserted barracks, half of whose window panes were smashed in. The unit commanded by Colonel Nai Turs was a strange one. Everyone who saw it was surprised to find it so well equipped with the footgear, felt boots, so essential to winter campaigning. At its formation 3 days before, the unit numbered 150 cadets and 3 second lieutenants. In early December an officer had reported to Major General Blokin, commander of the 1st Infantry Detachment. The officer was a cavalryman of medium height, dark, clean-shaven with a gloomy expression, wearing the shoulder straps of a colonel of hussars, who had introduced himself as Colonel Nai Turs, formerly squadron commander of No. 2 Squadron of the former Regiment of Belgrade Hussars. Nai Turs' sad eyes had a look in them which had the effect of making anyone who met this limping colonel, with his grubby St. George's cross ribbon sewn to a worn enlisted man's greatcoat, pay absolute attention to whatever the colonel had to say. After only a short conversation with NAI TERS, Major General Bloken entrusted him with the formation of the detachment's 2nd Infantry Company, with orders that the task was to be completed by December 13. Astoundingly, the job of mustering and organizing the company was finished by December 10, and on that date Colonel NAI TERS, by nature a man of few words, reported briefly to Major General Bloken, distracted on all sides by the insistent buzz of telephones from headquarters, that he, NAI TERS, and his cadets were now ready for combat, but only on the essential condition that his entire squad were issued with fur caps and felt boots for 150 men, without which he, NAI TERS, considered military action as totally unfeasible. When the laconic colonel had made his report, General Bloken gladly signed him a requisition order to the supply section but warned NAI TERS that with this piece of paper he was unlikely to obtain the equipment he wanted in less than a week's time, because both headquarters and the supply section were hotbeds of inefficiency, red tape and disorganization. Colonel NAI TERS took the piece of paper and, with his habitual twitch of the left half of his clipped mustache, marched out of General Bloken's office without turning his head to left or right. He could not turn it, because as the result of a wound his neck was rigid and whenever he needed to look sideways he was obliged to turn his whole body. At the detachment's quarters on Lvov Street, NAI TERS collected 10 cadets, armed, for some reason, and a couple of two-wheeled carts, and set off with them to the supply section. At the supply section, housed in a most elegant villa on Kudryavskaya Boulevard, in a comfortable office adorned with a map of Russia and a portrait of the ex-Empress Alexandra left over from the days of the wartime Red Cross, Colonel NAI TERS was received by Lieutenant General Makushin, a short unnaturally flushed little man dressed in a grey tunic, a clean shirt peeping over its high collar, which gave him an extraordinary resemblance to Milutin, Alexander II's war minister. Flinging down a telephone receiver, the general inquired in a childish voice that sounded like a toy whistle. "Well, Colonel, what can I do for you?" "Unit about to go into action," replied NAI TERS laconically. "Please issue felt boots and fur hats for 200 men immediately." said the general, pursing his lips and crumpling NAI's requisition order in his hand. Can't issue them today, I'm afraid, Colonel. Today we're taking an inventory of stores issued to all units. Come back again in about 3 days' time. And in any case I can't issue a quantity like 200. He placed the requisition order at the top of a pile under a paperweight in the shape of a naked woman. I said felt boots, NAI Tours rejoined in a monotone, squinting down at the toes of his boots. What? The general asked in perplexity, staring at the colonel with amazement. Give me those felt boots at once. What are you talking about? The general's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. NAI Tours turned to the door, opened it a little and shouted out into the passage. Hey there, platoon. The general turned a grayish-white, his glance swiveling from NAI Tours' face to the telephone receiver, from there to the icon of the Virgin hanging in the corner, then back to the colonel's face. There was a clinking and shuffling in the passage, then several red-banded cadets forged caps of the Alexeyevsky Military Academy and some black bayonets appeared in the doorway.